por un amor. Me desvelo y vivo apasionado. Tengo un amor que en mi vida dejó para siempre amargo dolor. Pobre de mí, esta vida mejor que se acabe no es para mí. Cuánto sufres mi pecho que late tan solo por ti.
Déjame sacar los lentes, Muy buenas noches a todos. A Roberto BJ Lucero, mucho gusto. ¿Sí me escuchan? Okay, gracias. So, thank you everybody for coming. Before I delve into the history of ranchera music and Lola Beltrán, I wanted us simply to hear the human voice. Unaccompanied, unexplained, just a voice carrying a wound, because that is where the canción ranchera begins. Not with trumpets, not with traje de charro, not even with mariachis. It begins with the human impulse to transform suffering into something beautiful enough to be shared. The lyric says, por un amor, me desvelo y vivo apasionado. Because of a love, I lose sleep. I live consumed by passion. This is a song that Lola performed along with many other artists. And the message is that love here is not simple happiness or unhappiness. It's insomnia. It's love that changes the body. And yet the singer does not collapse. The singer stands, breathes, shapes the pain, and offers it to everyone. That, I would suggest, is the defining power of the canción ranchera. It does not eliminate suffering, it dignifies it. Today we'll spend an hour with one remarkable woman who understood that better than almost anyone else, Lola Beltrán, Lola la Grande. So honored to have her dress here with us from that first year. And thank you again to Antonio Reina, who lent us that to grace us with his presence. So this is La Pasión hecha canto, passion made song. So people sometimes ask why ranchera or mariachi music in general still matters. Why do audiences continue crying over these songs that were written 50, 70, sometimes 100 years ago? I don't think that the answer is just nostalgia, right? It's not just nostalgia. Nostalgia alone cannot sustain an artistic tradition. Traditions survive because they continue answering questions that people still have. How do we love? How do we lose? How do we forgive? How do we carry grief? How do we remain dignified when our hearts are broken? Those questions never become obsolete. Every generation falls in love. Pues ojalá, ¿verdad? Every generation buries their parents. Every generation experiences betrayal. Every generation wonders who they are. La canción ranchera keeps providing a language for those experiences that ordinary conversation cannot carry. So tonight, we will hear 4 stories at once. First is the story of the canción ranchera itself. Secondly, the artistic life of Lola Beltran. Third, the partnership between the singer and the mariachi ensemble. And finally, what all of this means for all those of us and many of you who perform, teach, and listen to this music today. Mariachi Los Galleros del Valle will help us hear these ideas in the most important way possible, through live performance. So what is a canción ranchera? It seems like an easy question. If you ask somebody what a ranchera is, you might hear, oh, it's mariachi music. Or, no, it's actually Mexican country music, right? What do you do when you play it backwards? You get your dog back, you get your girlfriend back. Or is it just a sad song, right, about love and heartbreak? None of those answers is wrong, but none of them are complete. The canción ranchera is not primarily defined by instrumentation, rhythm, or geography. I suggest it is defined by posture, an emotional posture toward performance. Rancheras teach us how to stand before joy, loss, betrayal, death, and love. The singer may be devastated, but the singer remains standing. And that is not only theatrical, it's cultural. Mariachi does not equal ranchera. It's not a one-to-one thing, right? And I know there's a lot of maestros here. I hope you guys don't get bored for this part, but I just wanted to give a broad context over what is mariachi, what is ranchera music. So one common misunderstanding is assuming that mariachi and ranchera are interchangeable. They're not. Mariachi is an ensemble tradition, and ranchera music is one family of songs that mariachis and many other ensembles perform. Mariachis also perform sones, jarabes, huapangos, corridos, boleros, valses, polcas, danzones, pasos dobles, cumbias, many other genres, right? Nevertheless, mariachi history is inextricably intertwined with la canción ranchera. The mariachi gives ranchera its emotional architecture. Just to talk a little bit about some of the other genres that I just mentioned. Un son is sort of a pan-Latin American genre. There are sones from many different regions. Sones jaliscienses, sones mariacheros, sones huastecos, sones jarochos, sones cubanos, all throughout Latin America. Son is a piece of music that invites music. The dance is an integral part of the son. A corrido is a song that tells a story and asks us to follow that story. A bolero invites intimacy. A huapango creates rhythmic brilliance and tension. All these are beautiful and cultural forms, but the canción ranchera stands apart. A ranchera asks us to bear witness, to witness someone speaking truthfully about the human condition. Perhaps that is why the ranchera feels theatrical. It places a person at the center of a moral universe and asks, how will this person endure? Ranchera has a grammar of feeling, a whole language of emotion. Much of it is pastoral in origin. Birds, roads, rain, mountains, flowers, nighttime, cantinas, the countryside, parents, our mothers and fathers, the patria. These themes appear again and again. These are not mere decorations. They're symbols that carry weight. Rain becomes longing. Birds become freedom. Flowers become betrayal. Night becomes loneliness, and the landscape begins speaking for the singer. Tomás Méndez, you'll hear some of his songs tonight, understood this brilliantly, as did José Alfredo Jiménez, who had a different understanding of it. And Lola Beltrán possessed the gift of making all these images feel inevitable. With that, I'd like to invite Mariachi Los Galleros del Valle on stage and to play our first live example, which is Los Laureles, a song that was one of Lola Beltrán's staples. At first, it may seem like a simple love song, laurel trees, roses, flowers, beauty, but listen carefully. Underneath the flowers lies the fear of abandonment. The singer is not speaking about the beloved from a distance, but the singer speaks directly to the beloved. Si piensas abandonarme, right? Singing to the beloved. That direct address transforms private speech into a public ritual, and all of us become witnesses to the lover's communication. As you listen, notice how the mariachi participates in that transformation. The violins enlarge the emotional space. The trumpets answer the voice and affirm. The guitarrón gives the song gravity. The vihuela and guitarra are the heartbeat of this living song, and the harp provides rhythmic grounding and flowerful adornment at the same time. I give you Mariachi, Los Cayeros del Valle, performing Los Laureles. Gracias, los galleros. Eso. Before we enter into the next chapter and talk about Lola's story, let's remain with that performance for one moment. One mistake I think that young musicians sometimes make is assuming that familiarity equals understanding. One thing that I hear the maestros here at Mariachi Spectacular remind the students is that they have to practice their parts and internalize them, feel them within themselves, you know, and like really embody the parts that they're learning and playing. And so here, again, what do we hear about? Flowers, gardens, you know, all of this stuff. But think about the emotional symbols and sort of how contradictory elements are held together in the same space, right? Beauty and threat arrive in the same breath. And what matters for educators is not only that students sing the notes, it's that they understand what these images are doing. A flower may be beautiful, but in this song, beauty is already shadowed by the possibility of loss. I encourage you educators, when teaching a ranchera, ask the students first to speak the text as poetry. Before vibrato, style, before adornment, they must know whom they are addressing and what the images carry. I'd like to suggest that to understand Lola Beltrán and her legacy, we must understand la radio, the impact that radio had on Mexican culture. Every musical tradition has moments when technology changes everything. Opera wouldn't be opera without the theaters in which they were performed, these incredible opera houses. Jazz had these wonderful intimate clubs and these incredible live recordings. Rock had, a wall of amplifiers, while ranchera had radio. XCW in Mexico City was more than just a radio station. It became an institution through which 20th century Mexico imagined itself. Millions of listeners could hear the same voices on the same evening, sharing the same emotional experience. Before television made singers visible, radio made them intimate. A voice entered kitchens, workshops, living rooms, buses, cafes, plazas. People often knew the voice of a singer before they even knew what they looked like, right? And this is crucial for Lola because she first became a presence through the sound of her voice, not through any image of her. So Lola has a very interesting beginning as a performer. I was visiting with Maria Elena Leal, Lola's daughter, and she told me that she would hear stories that Lola would sing since she was really young. Since she was a toddler, she was already very musical, humming and singing songs, and that by the age of 7, she had already memorized El Herradero, a classic ranchera that she later on went on to sing, and that both her mom and her grandmother had very good voices. But Lola thought that it was very important to get an education, so she studied comercial, like she wanted to work in an office, and she ended up moving to Mexico City, both to pursue her singing career, but also to find a job in this office. So she actually got on working at XCW. So, sometimes we think about artists that, how are they discovered, right? But careers are rarely built that way. Of course, talent matters, preparation matters, but also institutions matter, mentors, proximity. Singer and movie star Miguel Aceves Mejia, who's heard of Miguel Aceves Mejia and his music? All right, good, a lot of you. So he recognized something in Lola and helped open a door for her. And he introduced her to Amado Guzman, who was the artistic director of XCW. And he heard her sing, and he liked her voice, but he didn't immediately hire her as a singer. He hired her as his secretary. And so she became his secretary. And imagine that, one of the greatest ranchera singers in history typing up his correspondence, working up in the institution of XCW. But she understood something important. Sometimes the opportunity is not the job that you hoped for. Sometimes the opportunity is simply being present for when that door opens. And so Matilde Sanchez, who was known as La Torcasita, sang on a show on XCW, and when she left on a tour, Lola auditioned to fill in that part. The musical director at the time was Tata Nacho, and he loved her voice and approved of her taking Matilde's spot while she was gone, and then eventually moved into her own show, and the course of ranchera history changed. So Lola was from a small town in Sinaloa called El Rosario. A lot of people put her birthday in 1932, but Maria Elena told me it's actually 1931. She's like, everyone thinks it's 1932. No, it's 1931. But, biographies often reduce people to dates, when were they born, died, awards, films, records. But those facts matter, but they do not explain her voice. To understand Lola, we have to begin in El Rosario. It was a mining town. She grew up hearing the church bells, going to family gatherings. She participated in local singing contests, concursos en la plaza. She sang popular songs. She sang in the church choir. and every great singer must begin as a listener. And before Lola interpreted rancheras, she was absorbing this soundscape del pueblo mexicano. So her journey from El Rosario to Mexico City mirrors some of ranchera music's deepest themes: departure, hope, risk, longing, the courage to leave home without leaving home behind. And, history remembers the great monuments, but families remember the person. And I feel so blessed to have been able to visit with some of Lola's family members. And one of the most moving parts of me preparing for this was when Carmelita Rodriguez, who's Lola's ahijada and special niece, told me the story. I asked her, what was Lola like as an aunt? What was she like? And she said that era una persona sencilla, pero fuerte. Somebody who was very straightforward, but strong, very strong-willed. And she said that she was deeply family-centered. She loved cooking mariscos. There's a plate in many restaurants in El Rosario called camarones a la Lola that they make after her recipe. And she loved playing loteria and visiting with friends and family. Carmelita remembered Lola sitting in the plaza. She'd come back to El Rosario, and she'd sit in the plaza and would talk to everyone. People would mob her, and she would just talk to everyone, sharing treats, que tenían ahí, whatever they had, semillas, whatever. And one other story said that Lola couldn't attend Carmelita's wedding because Lola was performing overseas in Europe. So she sent an entire trailer of Cerveza Pacífico to Carmelita's wedding. So that is Lola La Grande y Tía Lola all at once, right? National icon, generous aunt, family member, persona, y sabía festejar, eh? Whenever possible, Lola returned to El Rosario. She loved going to sing Mañanitas a la Virgen del Rosario in October. And that detail matters because my reading is that, success expanded her world, but it didn't replace her world. And today, the Museo Lola Beltrán, which was pictured in the prior slide in El Rosario, preserves many of her dresses like the one you're seeing here that she used on stage, photographs recording personal objects. But again, the museums preserve objects, the families preserve those stories, communities preserve belonging, and together we create the cultural memory. So by the time that Lola started recording, she got signed by Peerless Records, who she recorded most of her catalog with. She also later recorded with RCA Victor and other labels. But she possessed something that every great singer needs, not only a magnificent voice, but a repertoire worthy of it. And so one of the great collaborators she had was Tomás Méndez. And Tomás Méndez didn't merely write melodies, he wrote emotional landscapes. He wrote about palomas, a storm, el aguacero, a road, darkness, all these images that became vessels for Lola's feeling. And his lyrics rarely describe the emotion directly. Instead, he creates a world in which the emotion becomes visible and even palpable. And Lola understood this instinctively. And what I love about her interpretation of Tomás Méndez's pieces is that she never oversang them. She trusted the lyrical content. She trusted her interpretation, her breath, the silence, her timing in ways that words can only suggest. And so before we go to our next live performance, I just wanted to play a little clip of Lola singing. And this song, you might say, is not a ranchera. It's a huapango. But broadly speaking, it is part of the larger música ranchera. This was one of her first hits. Not her first recording, but one of her first hits, which was Cucurucucu Paloma. And so as we listen to this, I'd like to invite you to listen for her breath. Listen to how she opens her vowels, Listen to her restraint. She doesn't just, no le pega luego, right? Like she grows into these vowels. And every phrase prepares the next phrase. And she never sort of spends all of her emotion in at once. It's that preparation. So let's hear just a brief clip.
Cómo sufrió por ella, que hasta en su muerte la fue llamando. Cucurrucucú, cucurrucucú, cantaba. Ja, 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 ja. Reía. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Lloraba de pasión mortal. De pasión mortal. Moría.
So that was a key partnership. Tomás Méndez providing this poetic imagery and Lola giving it breath, height, feeling of destiny. So for our next live performance, I'd like to invite Los Galleros to perform another piece composed by Tomás Méndez, which demonstrates this metaphor of weather. How he, listen to the lyrics, how he uses this imagery of weather, el aguacero, which means a downpour, right? The weather becomes autobiography. In his imagination, rain is not simply rain, the storms become memory. Lightning becomes anticipation, the dark clouds become longing. As Los Galleros perform, listen to how the music gathers, releases, and then breathes like a storm. By the end, we discover that the real storm was never outside. It was inside her heart. Mariachi Los Galleros del Valle.
Se mira relampaguear, el cielo está encapotado, vaqueros para el corral, arriendan todo el ganado. La noche se viene encima, procure pronto llegar, mañana en la madrugada comenzamos a labrar. Ay, ya, 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 ya. Bendito sea el cielo, llorando te quiero muchísimo más y más. Ay, ay, ay. Ya, 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 ya. Esta noche mi tejano tendrá un olorcito a jarro. Ay, la lluvia me arrulla. Las primeras gotas fueron las tu fuente chaparrón, las calcayer mi sombrero alegran mi corazón. Ay, la, 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 ay, mi corazón. Ay, la, 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 mi corazón.
Otro aplauso para los galleros. So one thing that I love about that song, and gosh, especially how they just performed it, is how the different paces of it, right? We have so many different sort of genres brought into one, you know, son, huapango, the ranchera de dos cuartos, you know, there's different rhythmic elements that are brought in, and it's still a canción ranchera, even though it brings in these other elements, you know. A son generally has a lyrical structure that is like a call-in response that this song doesn't have, right? This song has more of a narrative arc that is more of a canción. So even though it does have son and huapango elements, I would still classify it as a son, as a canción ranchera. The other thing is, in terms of the singing, her vocal range was amazing, right? If you listen to how low it started, and then coming up to these super high notes. So that's one of the things that Lola was really incredible about interpreting. Lola also performed many pieces by another composer, one who probably needs no introduction, José Alfredo Jiménez. He was the most prolific songwriter. And, you know, it could be said that if Tomás Méndez painted emotional landscapes, José Alfredo Jiménez built emotional philosophies. You know, Méndez often says, look at the dove, look at the storm, the road. And José Alfredo says, look at your own heart. You know, his language can be astonishingly direct. I loved, I lost, I drank, I remembered, I survived. You know, and yet his songs are profound, because they transform heartbreak into wisdom. Not optimism necessarily, but wisdom, hard-earned. These songs do not promise that the suffering will end. They ask, how will you, or who will you become because you have suffered? And that may be one of rancheras, one of the deepest questions of the canción ranchera. Pain is inevitable, but dignity is a choice. And so I'd like to invite Los Galleros up again to perform another song, this one by José Alfredo Jiménez, La Noche de mi Mal. This next, many performers hear this simply as heartbreak, but something deeper is happening. The whole song turns on public dignity and private grief. The singer says in the lyrics that if she had begged her beloved not to leave, even her own heart would have laughed at her. You know, what an extraordinary line, that even her wounded heart demands dignity. And José Alfredo doesn't say that the singer didn't cry. You know, he says that the beloved didn't see them cry. The two different things, right? And so, you know, as educators, I know many of you here are educators, I think this is a powerful lesson that emotion is not volume. Emotion is not shouting, and that real intensity and performance often comes through restraint, and that true dynamics require quiet. So as an audience, I invite you to discover the emotion and, you know, let it sort of envelop you and hopefully not be forced upon you. Los Galleros.
No quiero ni volver a oír tu nombre. No quiero ni saber a dónde vas. Así me lo dijiste aquella noche, aquella negra noche de mi mal. Si yo te hubiera dicho no te vayas, qué triste me esperaba el porvenir. Si yo te hubiera dicho no me dejes, mi propio corazón se iba
iba a reír. Por eso fue que me viste tan tranquila, caminar serenamente bajo un cielo más que azul. Después ya ves, me aguanté hasta donde pude, terminé llorando a mares donde no estuvieras tú. Si yo te hubiera dicho no te vayas, qué triste me esperaba el porvenir. Si yo te hubiera dicho no me dejes, mi propio corazón se iba a reír. Por eso fue que me viste tan tranquila, caminar serenamente bajo un cielo más que azul. Después ya ves, terminé llorando a mares y terminé llorando a mares donde no me vieras tú. Si yo te hubiera dicho no te vayas, qué triste me esperaba el porvenir. Si yo te hubiera dicho no me dejes, mi propio corazón se iba a reír. Muchas gracias.
So again, that piece was by Jose Alfredo Jimenez. One of actually the very first song that Lola recorded was by Jose Alfredo Jimenez, Cuando el Destino, and it was actually her first gold record too. So this song is not only about heartbreak. I think this, as many other rancheras, is about self-respect. You know, obviously the singer is suffering profoundly, but it's suffering that doesn't erase her identity. And the canción ranchera is not emotional repression, it's actually emotional craftsmanship, you know, feeling everything, hiding nothing from yourself, but carrying yourself with dignity before the world. And notice again how the mariachi served the story, right? The violins weren't competing with the singer. The trumpets didn't overwhelm the lyrics, right? Even though obviously they're virtuosos, right? Great players, but their virtuosity existed in service of the song, right? It wasn't virtuosity for the sake of virtuosity. It served the emotional message. So one of the things that I asked Lola's family is, you know, what did they want the students and those of you here tonight to know about Lola? What was the most important thing that you carry with you? And they said that it was the way that she interpreted the feeling that she had. Because, you know, if you ask anyone who knows Lola Beltran what made her great, we might say her voice, right? But it's true, obviously, but it's incomplete. You know, great voices are not uncommon. But her uniqueness lied in what she did with her voice. She had this extraordinary interpretive intelligence. You know, if you listen to her recordings, where she breathes, where she waits, how she delays the emotional arrival. She, like I said before, she allows her vowels to bloom rather than forcing them open immediately. She understood that anticipation can be more impactful than, hitting notes with power. And she used her vibrato as expression. She trusted silence. Much of that cannot be fully written into notation, as much as we want to, be very detailed when we're writing arrangements or transcribing parts. A lot of that comes from, lived experience, listening to recordings, playing with many different ensembles, having an apprenticeship with maestros, like many of the maestros that we have here tonight, and that repeated performance, right? So, one thing that I was going to suggest to those of you who are educators, how I said before, how you can have the students speak the lyric. One thing you can do is, after they're singing it now, have them sing it sin vibrar, just like super plano, and then have them add just one expressive choice, right? Force them to make one expressive choice and really own it. And then and have each of them do something different, right? If there's multiple singers of it. So now you have different ideas and they can play off of that and listen to one another, right? And now you're growing this collective language of how your group is gonna sing. Just an idea to put it out there as I was listening to Lola. So one of the greatest contribution of Lola was not merely her success, but it was redefining authority. Ranchera music is often associated with masculine imagery, right? The charro, the cantina, the abandoned man, the public boast, the wounded male heart. But Lola did not imitate that world. At the same time, she didn't necessarily reject it, but rather she sort of took these songs, many of which were originally written for the male voice, and expanded them. She expanded them into her own interpretation. And she demonstrated that dignity and womanhood could sound different, that authority could wear a dress, that vulnerability could remain sovereign. And she inherited something from Lucha Reyes. She stood beside other singers like Amalia Mendoza, Lucha Villa. She influenced a whole generation and multiple generations now of singers. Aida Cuevas, Rocío Dúrcal, Linda Ronstadt counted her as one of their greatest influences, and countless other singers after that. And for students, especially those of you young women here who are participating in the conference or who are learning mariachi music and entering into the mariachi community, Lola teaches a crucial lesson that leadership is not just imitation. Authenticity means learning what came before, but then finding your own voice within that expanding tradition. And so I just wanted to give a round of applause for all of our women maestras that we have here at Mariachi Spectacular, and all of the women mariachi performers that are here in the house. Un aplauso, por favor. In the middle of the 20th century, Mexican popular music became cinematic, lo que le dicen la época de oro del cine mexicano. And it was critical to helping forge mariachi as sort of a national symbol of Mexico. The cinema gave audiences images that still shape Mexican cultural memory, right? The charro, el campo, devoted parents, the faithful lover, la revolución, las adelitas, the singer framed by the camera, right? And Lola entered this world at precisely the right moment. And, it can be said that her greatest contribution on screen might not have been dramatic acting, in sort of the traditional sense of, but it was her presence. She had an incredible presence, not just on stage, but on screen. And in fact, that's something that, another thing that Maria Elena told me that she wanted me to share with the students is that they look for videos of Lola performing, because the way that she commanded the stage is something that young singers can emulate. And so she encouraged me to share that. And, when Lola sang in a film, it wasn't like audiences were watching an actress who was pretending to sing. You know what I mean? They knew this was the singer. She was a singer, and she just happened to be captured on camera, And so many films maybe are remembered less for the plot than for the musical moments, you know? And these moments actually for us mariacheros become classrooms, you know? How are they pronouncing the words even, you know? How are they dressing? What are the gestures that they're using? Their stage presence, the interpretation. All of these things continue to influence performers to this day. Another landmark in Lola's career is that she was the first ranchera singer to perform at el Palacio de las Bellas Artes in Mexico City. Bellas Artes represents the official culture, right? Canonical music, opera, symphonic music, ballet, you know, classical recitals, national prestige, you know. When Lola stood on that stage, the question was not only whether ranchera music would be accepted by Bellas Artes, the deeper question was whether the nation's most prestigious hall could recognize what ordinary people already knew, that popular song forms can possess artistic depth. So this was not only a concert, it was a cultural statement. It answered the questions of what counts as art, whose music deserves preservation, and whose feelings deserve the nation's hall. And Lola answered that by singing. In addition to her lengthy film and stage performance career, she also was a television star. She hosted 2 shows. And if radio made Lola's voice familiar and cinema made her image iconic, television made her part of everyday life for millions of people across Latin America. Through television programs that Lola hosted, such as Noches Tapatías and El Estudio de Lola Beltrán, she became more than a performer. She became a torchbearer and a host of tradition of Mexican music. So week after week, audiences encountered new songs, composers, guest artists, different regional styles that she would invite to come perform. Long before YouTube, TikTok, and streaming, Lola was introducing listeners to the richness of Mexican musical culture. And so in that sense, you know, Lola was really also a public educator. Our final live piece may be the canción ranchera most closely associated with Lola Beltrán, la canción Paloma Negra. The image seems simple, right? A dove. But it's not a white dove. It's a black dove. Immediately the symbol changes. Beauty becomes mystery. Love becomes danger. And memory becomes obsession. Everything we've discussed so far converges here. Tomás Méndez' symbolic poetry, Lola's interpretive intelligence, the mariachi's emotional and musical architecture, and the dignity of the wounded heart. This is not simply a song about heartbreak. It is a statement of emotional sovereignty. The pain is real, but the singer does not surrender herself. Mariachi Los Galleros del Valle performing Paloma Negra.
Sí.
Ya me canso de llorar y no amanecer. Ya no sé si maldecirte o por ti rezar. Tengo miedo de buscarte y de encontrarte, donde me aseguran mis amigos que te vas. Hay momentos en que quisiera mejor rajarme y arrancarme, y los clavos de mi pena. Pero mis ojos se mueren sin mirar tus ojos, y mi cariño con la aurora te vuelve a esperar. Ya agarraste por tu cuenta las parrandas. Paloma negra, ¿dónde estarás? Ya no juegues con mi honra, parrandera. Si tus caricias deben ser mías, de nadie más. Y aunque te amo con locura, ya no vuelvas. Paloma negra, tú eres la reja de un penal. Quiero ser libre, vivir mi vida con quien me quiera. Dios, dame fuerza, me estoy muriendo por irla a buscar. Ya agarraste por tu cuenta las
Otro aplauso para los galleros, sí señor. So I would like to invite you to reflect on Paloma Negra as a song about memory, a memory that doesn't disappear. It changes shape. Sometimes it wounds, sometimes it comforts, sometimes it sings, and that is why this song has survived and continues to be interpreted, not just because you guys enjoy sadness, you know. It's because I think we can recognize ourselves in it, you know. I think that great art allows strangers to discover their own lives inside somebody else's stories. And yeah, that was a great performance. So what have we learned about Canción Ranchera? Let's kind of go back to where we began, right? Por un amor gives us love as sleeplessness, you know. Los Laureles gave us beauty shadowed by uncertainty. El Aguacero turned weather and pastoral imagery into emotional memory. La Noche de mi Mal gave us private grief carried with public dignity. And Paloma Negra gave us this wounded pride, you know. Together, these songs, all of which were huge hits for Lola Beltrán, and, you know, she really did incredible interpretations of all these pieces. They reveal that the Canción Ranchera is not simply a collection of pieces, but it is an emotional philosophy, a way of inhabiting the human condition. So what is Lola Beltrán's greatest legacy? Certainly her recordings, her films, her performances, you know, late in her life. I think not many people thought it would be late in her life when she recorded the Las Tres Señoras with Juan Gabriel. You know, such a long and incredible career. But again, as María Elena Leal, her daughter, told me, I think her greatest contribution lies in interpretation. You know, many of us singers can perform the same melody, but her performance changed history, you know, and her interpretations were not mere reproductions of what other singers did before. At the same time, she didn't discard that heritage, but it was imagination disciplined by that tradition. And so as an educator and performer, you know, I feel like we inherit more than repertoire. We inherit ways of listening, ways of breathing, of shaping silence, of respecting the lyric, respecting the language, honoring that poetry. And when students learn about Lola Beltrán and learn her pieces, they're entering into a conversation that began long before we were born. People sometimes ask whether young audiences will still connect, you know, with canciones rancheras or mariachi in general. Well, judging from the incredible attendance at this week's Mariachi Spectacular de Albuquerque, I can tell you they certainly do. They certainly do. And, you know, we still connect with this music, not because we all share the same historical circumstances or, you know, cultural upbringing, but it's because we all share the same human experiences: love, loss, family, identity, migration, hope, regret, joy. The circumstances may change, but the emotional questions remain. And that is why the Canción Ranchera continues singing in our hearts. So I'd like to return to our title, La Pasión hecha canto, Passion made song. And today I hope that that phrase now means more to you than just emotional singing. I hope that now you have given form to that feeling, beauty to the suffering, community to solitude, memory to history, and voice to identity. No artist accomplished that more magnificently than Lola Beltrán. She transformed private emotion into public culture. She reminded us that vulnerability can possess dignity, that strength can coexist with tenderness, and that music can preserve what history alone cannot. So as you leave today, I hope you take away more than melodies. I hope you take questions. How do we teach interpretation? How do we teach dignity? How do we teach our students not merely to perform rancheras, but to understand them, to embody them? Our traditions survive only when every generation rediscovers why they matter. Lola Beltrán once gave Mexico a voice through which millions recognized themselves, and now that voice belongs to all of us. May we continue listening, may we continue teaching, and above all, may we continue singing. Muchas gracias. Muchachos. Thank you all for coming. Please spread the word about Mariachi Spectacular. Thank you to Antonio Reina. Thank you to Lola's family members. Thank you to Jonathan Clark for background materials. Thank you to Peter Sanchez, Jeanette Salazar, Monica Trujillo, everyone at Mariachi Spectacular who made La Pasión popular. Special thanks to Mariachi Los Galleros del Valle. They serve not merely as performers, but as musical partners who brought life y corazón to the presentation. Bravo, muchachos!